A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away. Greetings and welcome to May the Panel Be With You, the Star Wars comic book show brought to you by the Punch Up Entertainment Network. I am your humble host, Mike Gargoni, and joining me, as always, the failed detonation of proton torpedoes to my Death Star destroying Yavin 4. It's John Campbell.
What is this? All I know is different.
Everything is different and new. Everything is strange and twisted. What is this world of infinite possibilities? Why, it is Star Wars A New Hope, but this time it's Infinities.
Yes, absolutely, because they can't call it What If.
Well,
but
this was made by Dark Horse, not Marvel, John.
Well, that's not what it says on my screen. No. How it was made, it was retroactively made by Marvel, which I think is so funny. We've talked about this before when we've done Dark Horse content now, that when you go there, it's just the cover, but they've erased the Dark Horse logo and put the Marvel logo. As if they were doing... No, it was always
us the whole time.
Don't ask any more questions. Yes, we're back in the world of Dark Horse. We jumped forward once more to cover... we're sort of finishing up our business with A New Hope before we move on to the Empire Strikes Back era.
Yes, indeed. We are putting aside childish things like Death Stars and desert planets to move forward to eventually getting to more Death Stars and desert planets.
Before we take a brief sojourn to AT-AT Walkers and ice planets.
Oh, we love those.
Oh, I do love the ice planet Hoth so much. But yes, this is Infinities. This is a real interesting little tangent of the Star Wars comic book universe.
Yeah, and it is in an era in which, or it comes to us from an era in which Star Wars was becoming a huge deal again. We've talked a lot about like this ignoragnum period that you and I grew up in which Star Wars kind of was what you made of it until the prequels came out, and then that all changed. Right,
yeah, it was sort of like post 1983 when Jedi comes out. Until 99 when Phantom Menace comes out. Star Wars was just 3 movies and then a bunch of tie-in media. That was exactly what you make of it. You could choose to engage with as much or as little of it as you wanted. Whether that was games, toys, comics, novels, audio adventures. There was all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, no... small part of that was the LucasArts video games, right? And I would say that was probably one of the largest cornerstones. Then we have the novels, which includes Heir to the Empire, Shadows of the Empire, all that stuff. And then the third pillar, at least I think for us growing up, was this Dark Horse era of Star Wars comics.
Oh God, I mean, some of this was early in my comics collecting days. I had so many of the Dark Horse comics. That was a cornerstone of the comics that I bought. And this was at a time when you could buy comics at the grocery store. So there was a lot of they put that rack out front, and a little kid me, anytime there was a Star Wars logo on a comic, I was like, I have to have this. Yeah. So we talk. You and I talk a lot about the nostalgia we get just for some of the aesthetics of layouts and stuff of the Dark Horse Star Wars era.
Mm-hmm. And it began in 1991 is when Dark Horse gets the license to Star Wars comics. And they start, as a lot of comic book publishers do, reprinting the old stuff. Obviously, we have Dark Horse reprints of the Marvel era stuff as well that exist.
Which is how I knew about the Marvel era, was not as Marvel comics, but as Star Wars classics from Dark Horse,
Yeah. But wild that they start with an adaptation of, or it's not even an adaptation, because I think Dark Empire a wholly original comic book story?
Yes, it is.
So yeah, they lead off with Dark Empire, which is a wild story
Oh
about
God, we'll get there. We'll get there someday. But yeah, that was,
yeah.
once again, that was as close to like a sequel thing as we had. That and the Thrawn stuff.
If people thought Palpatine returning in Rise of Skywalker was dumb and bad, then how do you think it feels when it's like the fourth or fifth time it's happened for people who've been reading books and
Yeah,
comics?
yeah, yeah. Star Wars just can't get away from that guy.
They really can't. But yeah, we are dealing with something that Dark Horse made like smack dab in the middle of their tenure with the Star Wars property, right after the first of the prequels had started to come out. Let's see, the first of these issues drops in May of 2001. And I believe that's like right around the time Clone Wars is coming out, or Attack of the Clones is coming out, isn't it?
It's 2002.
Okay, so just before Attack of the Clones, then.
Yeah, yeah, because it was 99, 2002, 2005. It was 3 years between each of the prequels because it was the same as the original trilogy.
Got it.
Then Disney had the great idea to go, let's only do 2 years. Nothing bad will happen.
Let's try to do one every year.
Oh, God. Remember that plan? And now there hasn't been one in 40 years? No. Yeah, so here we go. But but the interesting thing about this, why we're saying all this, table setting for this, is not only so Star Wars is continuing, but it does really feel like, well, we're in the prequel era now, so we can kind of take this look back and play around with the classic trilogy era, which still feels very nostalgic. Even though there's new Star Wars, it's a different Star Wars.
Well, and you have this established context of certain things existing, like, say, I don't know, a second and third movie that the comic books we're talking about in the 70s and early 80s really didn't have. So, with that added context, you can play with expectations and know what's coming in a way. So when you introduce a what-if scenario, you, the reader, have the context of like, well, I know the sequence of events. I know what goes from New Hope to Empire to Jedi. How can we play with those expectations, and what can we bring in that's familiar versus unfamiliar, and really remix this in a way that's a lot of fun?
Absolutely. And that's what we're looking at. So let's talk about Star Wars Infinities #1.
Yeah, there are 4 issues of this. We'll be covering all 4 of them, as is our wont to do. But we start where you should start, at the beginning, which is Star Wars Infinities: A New Hope, Part 1, written by Chris Warner. We've got pencils by Drew Johnson, inks by Ray Snyder, letters by Steve Dutro, colors by Dave McCraig, with cover art by Tony Harris. Dave Land is our supervising editor here. Dave Land will be a name we will see over and over again with Star Wars when we start talking more densely about the Dark Horse era.
He was the Star Wars editor at Dark Horse.
Yeah. But let's start things off with this cover, why don't we? Because right off the bat, boy, we ain't in the 70s anymore.
No, once again, this screams Dark Horse Star Wars to me. Like 100%. Everything about the design of this. I remember this cover because I remember this book coming out. But just in general, a lot of their covers had this vibe. We've got it feels much more like a movie poster than it does like a comic book cover. We've got this design of all of our main characters, including, I like the sort of faded ghost of Obi-Wan.
There's a couple of things here that already tells us, like, okay, we're going off the beaten track here, and Force Ghost Obi-Wan Kenobi is right at the top of that list, because at no point in A New Hope does Obi-Wan reveal himself as a Force Ghost, obviously.
No. We got Luke in his classic white Tatooine getup with a blaster. Vader, I love the glow of his red lightsaber and the way that the Death Star is behind him. So cool.
The ignition point on the lightsaber is almost the Death Star's beam emitter. Yeah,
it's really cool. This is a really well designed cover. A great rendering of Peter Cushing, who then has his hand on a fairly sinister looking Princess Leia.
Yeah, which gives you a hint about where this book is going to go. Uh, and
And then, by God, a Han Solo that looks like Harrison Ford.
and a
What?
Chewbacca that doesn't have the look of Sasquatch from Alpha Flight.
And they're there in a classic sort of like, what's going on, Chewie?
And we're here too.
Yeah, and also us, your favorite characters.
Speaking of
Probably.
dark leanings, I do, before we get too far into this, I do want to talk about just a little bit of background information I have
Yeah.
about this particular book. Is we know through some like interviews and stuff that the legendary Peter David was originally set to write
Oh
this.
God, yeah.
And thinking about what his take on this would be is so interesting. We have a brief description here of it because he is, maybe infamous is the right word, for giving us a certain story called Skippy the Jedi Droid.
Yes, that's right.
Do you know about Skippy, John? Have you been told the good word about Skippy?
I'm familiar with Skippy.
For those who don't know, Skippy is this idea that the red R5 we see in A New Hope is this droid that is basically possessed by the soul of a Jedi and
Yes.
destroys himself so that R2 can meet up with Luke and destiny can be fulfilled, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. It's a fun idea, right?
It's a fun idea.
Basically, this ghost of a Jedi inside of a droid, through its actions, it plays a small but key role in the events of Star Wars.
Yeah. So, Peter David's original take on the what if story here was that what if R5 didn't malfunction until after Owen Lars had bought him.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Jawas would have already been gone, R2-D2 off into the Jundland wastes, well before R5's motivator unit becomes clearly faulty.
Right.
This leads, according to, let's see, what is this sourced from? This is from Lost Works, a partial bibliography by Peter David.
Oh man, I need to read this. I need to find whatever this thing is of Peter David just writing about things that didn't happen that he tried to do.
Yeah, it's by Peter David on Peter David.
Oh, I need to read that because I love Peter David.
But apparently, and strap in for this, it would have led to a series of events which led to Leia Organa becoming the reigning Sith Lord of the Galactic Empire and taking Luke Skywalker as her apprentice and lover, unaware of them being siblings at the time.
Ooh, that I could see being something that might, even in an alternate reality, upset people particularly at Lucasfilm.
However, when David presented his outline to Lucasfilm, they rejected it for being too dark and told him that the story had to end with Luke, Leia, and Han triumphant over evil.
Okay, so that's
David
what I
was
saw.
furious at his proposal being rejected, finding no sense to changing one film's plot points to deviate from the what-if scenario if it still results in the same happy ending.
Now here's the thing. That I read that last part on the Wikipedia, and I did think, yeah, absolutely. Why are we doing a what if it's still going to basically end up in the same place? My opinion might have been, this is great. Maybe the incest is too far. Can we just turn on that? I love how because the idea of it being too dark, that's stupid. But that is a little upsetting, and I do get that might be a step too far.
Because obviously he's taking the running joke that has been done in Clerks and elsewhere of like, ew, Luke kissed his sister, and like taking it to its logical extreme.
Right, which is, I mean, like as a thought exercise, and I totally get why like a creative mind might go there in a what if scenario, but I could understand why that might make them uncomfortable. But I wonder if he would have been. Yeah, but I wonder if he would have been open to like, well, what if we just lose that? But the rest, he's 100% right to be furious about the idea that, well, it still has to work out at the end because it's like, that's ridiculous. That is so limiting to the what if scenario.
Yeah,
it's almost like, why are you even doing the book then?
Now that being said, that is the ending we're gonna get here. So let's
it's
try
still,
not.
It's still good. It's just. I don't. It can do that, but the idea that it has to do that is
very
infuriating.
limiting.
Yeah. All right.
let's get
That being
into it
said,
because, yeah, we get our opening page here. So nostalgia, very much 90s.
oh
Yay.
God, I know.
Even though
Because the
this was published in
uniformity of these
2001.
comics were like this. It was just very cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's go here. Long time
We have
ago in a
this Infinities logo, though, that I want to talk about on this credits
oh, yeah.
page that has only ever been used here and a couple of other places. I'd be interested to see this resurrected. But anyway.
Well, I would love to see. I mean, it would be cool to do. They could do Infinities with the prequels or the sequels or anything now. I mean, that
Totally.
feels like, and they could literally call it "What If," of course, now if they wanted to. Because as I was just talking about to you before we came on here, the Marvel is doing Aliens "What If" right now.
Yeah.
They're about to publish that, or maybe it's out depending on podcast time travel.
But yes, on this next page, we get the start of our opening crawl.
Yes, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. We get, I mean, this is basically the classic sort of what if thing where it's like, here's the story you know. War raged between oppressed and oppressor, between rebel and empire, between the guardians of peace and justice and the servants of darkness. Love the term servants of darkness. That's cool as hell. A proud and noble tradition was passed into the charge of a new generation. Steadfast alliances were formed in the Crucible War. And we get these sort of like iconic images from Star Wars, right? The blockade runner being attacked by the Star Destroyer, Leia with Vader and Tarkin. Obviously, that leads to the destruction of Alderaan. Luke getting his lightsaber, and then Han and Chewie and Luke and Obi-Wan in the cockpit of the Falcon.
And we get more recaps of them in the dark heart of the universe, the islands of courage in a vast ocean of fear. Love that. That goes so hard.
Well, this is doing that cool thing that I always talk about, one of my favorite comic book moments ever, which is the beginning of Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, where he did the story of Superman in 5 panels.
Yeah.
The doomed planet, desperate scientists, last hope, kindly couple, Superman.
Yep,
and
that's all you need.
There it is. And so that's what I like about this is doing a similar thing where it's like Star Wars is and this also is the breaking point, right? We're going to get to where it separates. Like Star Wars is exactly as you know it, and we're going to succinctly show and tell you. And yes, once again, I know Archie Goodwin did a lot of good stuff, but seeing how concise and well written these are and evocative with just a few words, oh, great.
Destiny's fulfilled, destiny's unfolded.
Yeah.
Next page, we get everything in these first 2 pages leading up to the events of the destruction of the Death Star. And then at the very end, it's just a star field and the words, alter one event and a new future comes to be.
Just because of the What If animated show, I am hearing this in Jeffrey Wright's voice.
I mean, sure. Yeah, that's the optimal comic book narration is Jeffrey Wright.
Oh, God. Yeah, can Jeffrey Wright narrate everything? His voice is just so smooth and pleasant to listen to.
So this double page spread is the start of our What If, and we'll widen out the view for our YouTube viewers so you can see the full double page spread here. Because
of the way we record these, I literally went last night from reading 70s or early 80s Star Wars to this, and it's just so shocking, the jump in the coloring, the attention to detail, the way this is so lovingly rendered, where you're like, God, somebody really put time into every curve and fold and marking on these X-Wings and TIE fighters, right? Like,
yeah,
it's so ingrained in our culture now. I mean, aside from just changes in technology and art style, it just now everybody knows Star Wars, so it better look right.
Yeah, and we've got Luke deactivating his targeting computer. He's lost R2. Vader says, I have you now.
Yeah.
Then, what's this? It's a Han Solo coming in.
They do capture my favorite line reading ever from Vader, which is the what? That's in New Hope that I love so much. And then the Yahoo! And God, I love all and this is all very just taken as the modern, but like, it's so much thought given to light source. Like, look at the way the light is hitting one side of his face and the other side is shadowed. That's just something that it wasn't done in the same way. It wasn't done to this expressive way in older comics. And that's still, I mean, at this point, that's still, this is pretty new stuff. The idea of making something really thinking about, okay, if the sun is here, then it's hitting him like this. And it's really doing it. There's shadows and stuff in older comics, but that's so striking.
And especially monthly comics, we should say, because there's plenty of older comics that like took their art and the process of it seriously.
oftentimes, oftentimes when we say comics, and because of the show we are talking about monthly American mainstream comics, right?
Right.
We're not talking about underground stuff or European or Japanese comics.
Yeah.
And that's not to be disparaging to those. It's just sort of for brevity's sake on the show. When we say comics, that's what we mean.
Our personal shorthand when we say
Yeah.
comics generally refers to something being published by Marvel or DC, and that's just the long and short of it, especially when we're referring to that era that we're comparing a lot of this stuff to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, that's not to disparage any of that stuff because
yeah.
there's a lot of, particularly like in Europe, there's a lot of people who are really pushing the medium forward in a huge way with this kind of stuff. And even some people in America, I think Neil Adams was definitely ahead of his time in trying to be more realistic and renderings of stuff.
Fucking Frank Miller at a
Frank
similar
Miller?
time period. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
But yeah, we have Luke sinking the shot with his proton torpedoes, but then they're flying away. Let's blow this thing and go home. The thing does not blow, John.
It does not. He shooms the torpedoes. They whoosh in, and then we better get at it because it's about to blow. Wait, what? No, it didn't go.
So Han has this line. This is where we start our deviation. Hustle it up, kid. You don't want to get your tail feathers singed. And
yes.
Luke's rejoinder of "That's a heat I won't mind a bit, Han." Like that feels like good Han Luke back and forth.
And then once again, look. Okay, yeah, I know. I'm going to stop with this. I swear. But like the way that the way that they shrink the word bubble and the size of the text down to not one bit, giving you a sense of that he's saying that differently.
Yeah.
And then wait a minute. Why hasn't it? And so the thing is, one of the torpedoes detonated, but one of them detonated short of the reactor.
Yeah.
So they did do damage to the Death Star, but far from destroying it.
And then Wedge just letting him know, look, it happens. Power fields, heat flux, faulty chips,
it happens, man.
error. You did your job. We did what we could.
Yeah, man. Don't beat yourself up, Luke. We're all going to die, but it's not your fault.
Because, Luke Skywalker has failed to blow up the Death Star.
Mm-hmm. Due to, it isn't his fault, because it is just...
Could have been anything. Yeah.
Yeah. But
hell, a Red Leader takes the first shot onto the Death Star, and the torpedo goes off on the surface, doesn't actually do anything. Like people took multiple shots at this thing. Luke just happened to have the Force, and in this version of reality, didn't work out.
He still did it all correct. It's just tech burned him.
Mm-hmm. So on this next page, what's this? TIE fighters, because Death Star didn't destroy. TIE fighters are still all around. Suddenly, we're scrambling. We don't know what's going on. The Death Star is not blown up. That means the rebels aren't safe. That means shit's up in the air.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, everything you thought you knew is out the window. And that's the excitement of Star Wars Infinities. Uh-huh. And so, everybody's fighting away. And then we go down to the surface, and Donna and Leia are like, well, shit.
Donna basically turning to Leia, being like, "We got to get out of here now."
Yeah, I'm such a 12-year-old boy, but it's just like, but the torpedoes detonated prematurely, Your Highness. It happens to every man sometimes.
We've all had a premature torpedo detonation from time to time.
Look, it's nothing that's out of our control. That's all I'm saying.
I have found if you don't want a premature torpedo detonation, you just really think about pod racing while you're in the middle of your shooting off your torpedoes.
Yeah. Look, at my age, I'm just glad it detonates at all. That's all I'm saying. And so he's immediately like, we got to get you out of here, Leia, because they are about to blow up everything, and you absolutely have to survive.
Yeah, and this is where we get our first look at a darker character to Leia, because she's just has this little word bubble here where she says, future. I've seen what that battle station can do, General. The rebellion has no future.
Right. It's sort of like, even if we survive this, it doesn't matter because they can just go around blowing up planets left and right. Who cares?
Where does it put Leia if the weapon that destroys Alderaan
Yeah.
is still out there?
Yeah. And that's the fun thing that's so great about the what ifs or the infinities like this. It's the spiraling. It's not just, okay, if this, then how does that spiral out into all this stuff? Um, it's very cool. And so, yeah, we have an incredibly dark moment for Leia. So let's see. So yeah. So then it's like, okay, well, where do we go then? We can't go back to the planet.
Yeah.
For Han and Luke up in the sky. So
Yeah, Han, where are we going? And Han saying, anywhere but here, kid.
yeah, I don't fucking care. Jesus Christ, get far away from that thing. And so yeah, the Death Star is targeting the Rebel base, but Luke did do something. I love smug Tarkin too, because they're going like, well, we can fire it, but it's not going to go. It's not going to. We're not going to be up to, what do they say, optimum functionality. He's like, optimum functionality is hardly necessary to swat an insect, Lieutenant.
You may fire when ready.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, the only thing that's great about this, the other thing that's great about this is it imagines a world where you get even more Peter Cushing in Star Wars.
I know, this is like, okay, we've got a couple of turns on this page that are all new branches to the Infinities, right? So we've got, at the top of the page, we've got Han saying, right now, the only rebel you can save is yourself. So, like, okay, what if this moment of victory for Han Solo coming back and saving his friend is then, like, Uno reverse carded to, no, we've got to get out of here? Does Han Solo revert to selfish smuggler a little bit more?
Yeah, because it's like, well, I took a shot and it didn't go, so let me just get mine. Yeah, because he's not, like, at this point fully invested in the beliefs of this.
No.
Yeah.
If not for the, like, compounding victory and the whole rebellion holding him up as a hero, does Han Solo stick with the do-gooder attitude?
Right. And so they commence the primary ignition.
Yeah, obviously the second branch here is like, uh-oh, Tarkin's still around.
Yeah. Yes, which is very cool. So they commence and we get all the cool stuff, which I always love. Oh, because I always love sci-fi procedure. So seeing the full and I love the way that all the beams come, of course, and I've talked about all this in other art we've seen. And then Luke's just that simple, really effectively done.
Yeah, and we see the Death Star firing, and Luke shouts out Leia, which I found interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, he loves her.
To be fair, Luke's not super invested on the rebellion at this point. He just knows.
I just met all these people, and
know.
the only other guy I know is dead. So and vroom, this place gets leveled.
Yeah, but not importantly destroyed.
Which I love, because that further speaks to Tarkin's, smugness or whatever, right? His what's the word I'm like? Hubris, yeah, right. The idea that it's he's just like, well, whatever, man. It's just a little base. We don't need full operational functionality. It's like, well, maybe you needed a little bit more than that.
Yeah, and this is kind of like an early echo of what we'd eventually see in Rogue One, right? Of just like the single reactor firing on Jeddah or Scarif.
But even that had more power than this.
Yeah. Because we get some rebels being like, we're alive?
Yeah. Including, most importantly, Princess Leia.
And General Dodonna, he's around.
I'm here too. Who cares if my torpedoes work? I'm alive.
Leia coming back around, always guns blazing. Can we raise the attack fleet?
Oh, good Lord, yeah. There they go. And then, oh boy, do I love the choice to do this all in blocked colored text of Tarkin saying, blast!
Yeah, in the green text. Yeah, that's a good lettering choice right there.
It's so good. And so he's just, and then he says, I want full power to the weapon. Divert from life support if necessary. I won't have the Emperor's triumph denied. Or mine, probably too, actually, because that's really what we're talking about. Let's be
But
honest.
Tarkin just going, and release every reserve fighter to intercept any rebel ship that may get off that moon. I want Lord Vader to lead this operation personally. I don't intend to let anything slip through my fingers.
Yeah, he's immediately just like in damage control mode, right? He's like, haha, my victory. Wait, not quite. Well, just let's fuck everything up then. Just get this taken care of. I thought this was going to be easy with one blast, but never mind. I'll just wreck everything.
Chris Warner has an interesting job writing this comic, right? He needs to give us something new and interesting, but also he has got to find the voices of these characters in a way that, like, he is writing dialogue for these characters that never existed.
Right.
But has to build off of that movie, like, immediacy, which I find interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is interesting because, these are characters we're all very familiar with, and obviously, certainly plenty of other comics have captured the voices, but yes, you're now putting them in scenarios that are unfamiliar, so you're thinking on two hands. You have to think about what would these... It's one thing to think broadly, what would they do and how would they change? But it's another thing to think literally in the moment, how is this changing what they're saying or how they're talking? And we talked about... It is the thing about, like, suddenly there's a darker shade to Leia immediately and stuff like that. And I think he does a really good job of making these characters familiar, but seeing how they're changed.
Yeah. I think they don't intend to let anything slip through my fingers is like such a pointed line of just like, okay, he is aware of Star Wars in an intimate way, so Tarkin himself can talk about something that Leia mentions to him earlier in the film, because that would have only been like a day ago as of this character existing in this moment.
Right. It's very cool. He does a great job with it. So they're getting ready to, like you said, he gave the order for this, and Han's like,
Luke are trying to escape.
Yeah, we can't shake them.
You can't shake them.
Yeah. And then Han suggests that when we go to the next page, slingshot around the planet. Now, I know that's very dangerous because it's very easy to go back in time if you do that. And then they're going to have to find some whales.
Oh, this is a Star Trek 4 reference. I thought this was a Superman reference.
No, that would be turning the planet back around. That's different.
Got it.
Star Trek short where they slingshot around the sun and go back in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they just do it again.
Yeah, of course.
I always love the end of any Star Trek time travel movie because both Voyage Home and First Contact do that, where they just go, "Oh, if we just reverse then we're back." It's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. Okay, it was that easy the whole time.
Seemed like a big fucking deal to go back in time, but returning to your time is just like, I just programmed it in and now we're good.
Look, we've only got 15 minutes left in the movie. We got to get back.
Yeah, it's just like, do you want this movie to end? Come on, folks. There are always those things where it's like, but how? It's like, do you want the movie to be 20 minutes longer? I don't think you do. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, they're gonna get out of here. But yeah, I do like that it takes a while for them. It's not just as simple as this. As you're talking about, they launch these fighters. It takes them a while to figure out where the hell they're gonna go. And Han is basically going like, Luke, we have to go. We can't win this fight.
Yeah. Luke is like, how are we going to shake these guys? Han does something stupid where he like puts on the e-brake and goes sliding backwards into some TIE fighters. I don't know how that works in space, but don't worry about it.
It's cool as hell, though.
Luke calls him a crazy pirate, and Han comes back with crazy and good looking.
Very Han. That's cool. This is all awesome stuff.
But we got more and more TIE fighters coming in.
Yeah.
Back on the Death Star, the power levels have been stabilized.
I was going to say, I do love the reversal of Luke telling Han not to get cocky. He goes, me? Never. Very fun. Yeah, power levels have stabilized. And then the rebellion's stay of execution has been rescinded. Obliterate them. Obliterate them is such a good Tarkin line. Yeah.
Thankfully, some of the rebellion transport ships have made it away from Yavin 4 at this point. Though 3PO will do everything in his power to remind us that we're doomed.
Never forget, folks, we are doomed. And then I like Leia saying, oh, will you just...
But then she is cut off as there's a... Guess what planet gets blown up next?
Yeah, there goes Yavin 4, folks.
Yep.
And it goes up.
this is such a good looking explosion on this page. I would just this bottom panel of the 3 transport ships flying away from an exploding planet. I would have that poster on a wall somewhere.
Absolutely, it's gorgeous. So that blows up. There they go. And I do like when we go to the next page and we see them taking the impact of that explosion.
Yeah, Dodonna comes back with a damage report.
Minimal damage. Yeah, they're okay, but everybody's on top of them. And now Vader's back in the game.
That's another thing we gotta remember. Like, okay, Vader at the end of New Hope goes spinning off into space. Only support he could possibly have gets blown up. But in this reality, no, there's plenty of craft around that can go grab him, tow him back in, give him a jump start, and suddenly Vader's back in the game.
Absolutely, and that's what we get here. And they're going to... He's intercepting them.
Attention, rebel vessels. Power down your engines and weapon systems at once. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. Consider yourselves prisoners of the Empire.
One might even say resistance is futile, if you will.
Look, he's a cyborg, but he ain't that kind of cyborg.
He's not trying to make other cyborgs, though.
No.
Famously,
he doesn't leave enough left.
No. The Borg are like, what are you doing? Those were perfectly good drones.
But their organic uniqueness, no!
Oh, you could add them to collective. Oh. I like a disappointed Borg collective. No!
So yeah, as of now, Leia and Dodonna and a chunk of the rebellion have been captured by the Empire.
That's bad news. Meanwhile, Luke and Han still trying to get out of there.
So they're basically doing the whole like slingshot around the planet, trying to lose these TIE fighters. When Luke kind of loses it a little bit here on this next page, as Han's like, Luke, you still with me?
Yeah, the amount of this stuff where he's just like, Luke, hey buddy, and Luke is crying, going, they murdered them all, but really they murdered Leia.
Yeah,
that's what I'm actually upset about, Han.
And Luke cuts loose. He starts flying with rage and anger in his heart. He is going a little bit off stick here.
One could say he's getting his murder on.
Yeah. And on this next page, I love this panel of just like the gleaming red eye that Luke has as he begins taking down all these TIE fighters in a rage.
Yeah. It's a touch to the dark side, right? We know that there's the path that, fear is the path to the dark side, but fear leads to anger.
But fear of loss, fear of losing what you love.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot like his dad.
A little bit. So when he gives in here and just like goes ham on these TIE fighters, he has to have Han shouting in his ear, but then suddenly a ghostly voice says, Luke, hear me, Luke.
Luke, calm down. Stop murdering.
Luke, stop being such a wuss.
I've seen this before. Do you want to be like your old man? He sucked.
You know what happened to him, Luke? Left him in a pit of lava, I did.
Yeah. Hey, I may be a ghost, but I'll come back and kick your little ass too if you're not careful.
Ornery old man Obi-Wan is my favorite look for him.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it makes sense. He was always a little snarky, right? And a little prickly. That's what I love about him.
That kicks Luke out of it. I love the color fade here from red on the top of the page to blue at the bottom of the page. It's very, very good color work. They're
doing a lot to emphasize the emotions of the characters with the art, which is so important. And especially in this, where we're really trying to shift how these characters feel and get a sense of why they're different than the versions we know of them.
Right. Because is there a moment in the movies where we really see Luke lose himself to the dark side?
No, even when they try to tell you that he is. I mean, I think the closest is when he's bashing Vader in the throne room duel, right? And he's pummeling him with. That's probably as close as we get to. But even that is still like not. We're meant to. The scene is telling us that, but no, I don't think so.
But I like that as a what-if posit. Just like, okay, now we're dealing with a Luke who's literally lost everybody except for Han and Chewbacca, who he's like maybe even only kind of friends with at this point.
Right, exactly. It's an interesting thing because we've never. I think that's the key is we never really see Luke in a position where even as like bad as the end of Empire is, it's still not all hope is lost sort of moment where he would turn to the dark side. And at that point by Empire 2, he's also trained with Yoda. He's a much stronger Jedi. But this is the moment where he was really vulnerable, right? Like had this gone bad, he's not yet become the Jedi Knight that he needs to be to weather this sort of experience.
So this is what forces the hand of Ghosty One, who says, "Don't give in to your anger. Save yourself. Your destiny lies elsewhere."
Yeah, and so that shakes him out of it, and Han picks him up and is just like, "Hey, man, I don't need to hear it right now. Just let's get out of here."
Yeah. Save the story for campfire, kid. It's getting a little thick around here.
Yeah. Luke, TIE fighter's still around. Got to get out of here. And so Han pulls a trick, kind of like Empire here, where they're going to fly through the debris field.
Yeah. So they're going to fly through the remains of Yavin 4 to try to shake these TIE fighters, which is grim.
It is grim, but that's very on character for Han Solo to go, all right, we just need to survive right now. We can reckon with the emotional fallout of this, and there's my thing. Han is always good on his feet, right? Improvising a crazy way out of a situation. And I do love when we go to this next page, all the TIE fighters smashing into the rocks and stuff is great.
TIE fighters, despite being so fast and light and maneuverable, famously bad at being fast and maneuverable.
And then a great Han and Chewie exchange where Chewie's yelling. He goes, "Yeah, I didn't hear you coming up with any ideas." That's right on point for them. And of course, look, Luke, I know that your instruments failed you, but technically the Force did actually work, so...
Yeah.
Don't blame the Force, kid.
Luke struggling to make it through this asteroid field when Obi-Wan comes back in and says, "Reach out with your feelings, Luke. Let the Force guide you."
Yeah.
And Luke, against his better judgment, does just that, and he and Han make it out of there.
Sure did. Yeah, he sure does. There we go. They're going to be okay. That's it. We're clear.
Depressed Luke is forcing Han into the position of trying to be the voice of reason here, which is a weird look on Han Solo.
Not a good look for me, kid. Nope. Nobody wants that. Trust me.
Stop trying to make me the responsible one, kid.
I can't have that. That's not how this relationship works. You gotta balance me out.
Because he says at the bottom of the page here, "We can't help them, Luke. I'm sorry, kid, but we have to leave. We won't get a second chance."
Yeah. And so they go to light speed. Now.
Yeah. They punch it and get out of there.
And so they're bringing Leia and Donna to Vader and Tarkin. They've been captured.
Yeah, the art here on Tarkin kind of wobbles a little bit for me.
It gets a little bit more caricature-y than it was before.
Yeah.
And look at that nose.
And as we go through this series, we'll talk about some of the behind-the-scenes troubles this book might have had, but the publication history speaks to... I don't know if this particular book was anyone's priority necessarily. Obviously, there's a lot of care and craft that goes into it, but there's also a certain amount of rush work happening here.
Yes, it definitely feels like it's more intentionally made than the special edition adaptation we looked at.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So much. This is at least like people are having fun and being creative, but maybe are a little rushed.
Yeah. Because we have Tarkin re-greeting Leia here. "Ah, princess, we meet again. We must extend our hospitality to you. What, nothing rude to say, your highness?"
Yes. And she just says no. She's defeated. This is not the same Leia who was, doing witty banter with him on the bridge of the Death Star earlier.
No, this is a Leia who is experiencing defeat, and there's something a princess once said about what rebellions are built on, and that is hope. And this is a Leia who is being stripped of hope.
Right. And so how can you rebel without that hope? And you can't, you got to be all in on that.
But we have this last frame here of Tarkin still as our main antagonist, with Vader just behind him, saying, "Good, your time will be well served reflecting on how you shall best serve the Empire."
Ooh, that's dark.
Yeah, and that kind of closes out this issue. This is a very abrupt ending for this issue.
Yeah, I don't know if the future issues have any different sort of, but this just kind of, this sort of just stops.
Yeah, which like made me question. And for those on YouTube, you can see I'm holding up a hard copy omnibus of the Infinities book.
You actually have
when I'm reading the hard copy, there is no, like, a lot of times when you read a hard copy of a trade paperback of a collected comic series, there will be like pretty clear breaks on when the issues end and the next issue begins. Sometimes they'll even go as far as to include like the covers of those issues in between to tell you like, okay, this is where the issue stops and starts. This book, especially the trade paperback, doesn't read like that at all. It reads like this just cut off on to this scene and should proceed to the next one.
Reading this on my iPad last night, I just was scrolling, and then it suddenly goes to go to next issue. I was like, oh, because there's also no delineation of what we normally see, which is like next issue this or whatever, you know?
Right.
So it is, but we spent a while going through and going, no, these came out as issues. It doesn't feel like it, but
yeah. And look, full cards on the table, I didn't read this until it was collected in a trade. So until we started researching for our coverage of this, I was under the impression that this was released as a graphic novel, because that's the only way I've ever read it.
Feels like that. And we were talking about, my theory is still that it was created as that and then broken up, because it doesn't feel like it's designed or written to be in issues.
Right. In a very similar way to, we talk about the pacing of how do you break up A New Hope into a comic book. And obviously the manga one we read, I think, was the most successful version of that. But they had a lot more space to work with, a lot more page count that could be played with. The special editions felt the most like lazy and rushed in ways.
Yes, absolutely. It's a weird time too, because Dark Horse didn't, they carried the license for a long time, but they didn't quite have the same overarching approach to quality maybe that Marvel does. Like, there's a real uniformity to how the Star Wars comics come out now, and it was a little bit more freewheeling under Dark Horse. Stuff would just kind of pop up here and there. There was no real sense of this having any kind of cohesion to it.
Yeah, I mean, we had Dark Empire right out of the gate. We had Dark Empire 2 pretty quick after that. We had a Droids ongoing book. We had the book that I think you and I are looking forward to the most, which is the Rogue Squadron book, right? And that ran for a few years.
That was a huge. I was a huge avid reader of that, big time.
The big ongoing book, I think, that like really drew people to was Star Wars Republic. Was the longest running book they had.
Yeah, we also are both huge fans of Star Wars Legacy.
And Legacy was another book that ran for a long time between 2006 and 2014, with a big old gap in the middle. But
yeah, absolutely. So like I said, it's weird. Their publishing is weird. They've always been kind of a strange company. I feel like
they also had just like a shit ton of miniseries. Obviously, they had their adaptations.
It was almost all built on miniseries. They really had a couple of truly ongoing books. So, I respect a lot of what they did, but I think it's probably in better hands now. I would say that's not really a controversial opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the overall quality is probably a little bit better, but I think, at least for now, the highs of the Dark Horse era still are like big for me.
Oh sure, I mean, I'm not saying that there's, but it's just like, yeah, that's more what Marvel exerts a better quality control over the title as a brand, and I think most people would agree with that. But there are some great classic Star Wars stories in here.
Like, I love Crimson Empire so much.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, Crimson Empire is cool. I mean, I haven't read it in forever, but I loved Dark Empire when it came out. I had and I still do have somewhere the hardcover collection of their Thrawn trilogy adaptation. So yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia in these books for me, for sure. But let's be honest, Dark Horse is kind of known for not always hiring the most talented people, so you were really at the mercy of who was working on the book, of course.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
Yeah. Once again, I don't think any of these are super controversial opinions.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But this is definitely a book that is kind of like smack dab in the middle of their run, I guess, because they lose the Star Wars license kind of right as Disney is taking it over, and obviously corporate synergy being what it is, it shifts back to Marvel in like what, 2014, 15, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's in there. Yeah, I don't remember. It's a little bit before Force Awakens comes out.
Yeah. So, but we have this like 25-year period in which a single publishing house was like doing the Star Wars stories and comic books, and that was just like, that was their wheelhouse, for better and for worse. And I think this is pretty emblematic, Infinities is, of the quality of books, whereas like even with their stuff to complain about, this is still like, we're getting new and interesting Star Wars books. Quality can vary, as comic books do, but the fact that we're even getting them, and getting quite a few of them, was heartening as a Star Wars fan.
It definitely felt like, I feel like when Dark Horse lost the Star Wars license, it was kind of time to freshen it up, regardless of what you think of. It felt like Dark Horse had done a lot, and yeah, maybe they weren't ready to jump into a whole new world of Star Wars. It was like maybe the time had come. Now, little did we know then the Fox merger would happen, and they would basically lose all of their licenses for a company that was built on licenses.
Sure.
Yeah, weirdly. Although they're starting to get some stuff back a little bit, or at least they're starting to work in combination with Marvel on some stuff.
Yeah. I just remember the last little big excitement push for the Dark Horse comics was the Dawn of the Jedi stuff, right? Where it's we're going back to the very, very earliest origins of the Jedi. And when your big play is like the ultra prequel, I feel like you've reached the tail end of the stories you're looking to tell, right?
Well, because they did the two big things, right? They did the far in the future, which is Legacy, and then the Dawn of the Jedi is the far in the past. So it is sort of like you've made the two big swings.
Yeah. And Dawn of the Jedi has its ups and its downs, and there's some interesting stuff there. But
and like I said, I mean, the biggest thing for me was they not never, because you have like Ostrander doing Legacy, which is some of the best stuff. But a lot of the top comics talent didn't work for Dark Horse. And so the level of people who have worked on the Marvel book is, in general, higher. Just in terms of like having A-list, comic book creators.
Sure.
Anyway, that's all to say. This is very fun.
Yeah, no. And look, the reason we're going on this diatribe about Dark Horse is A, because we wrapped up our coverage of this actual issue pretty quickly, and B, because I think there's a lot of table setting that needs to be done in terms of our coverage going forward when we start getting into this Dark Horse era, because it is such a different monster than the Marvel era, where we talk about like Jim Shooter's like slow takeover of Marvel Comics, and like there's a meta narrative that we're also covering with a lot of these books. And the three big eras that we're going to end up talking about as we cover Star Wars comic books as a whole is Marvel Era 1, Dark Horse Era, Marvel Era 2. Like, there are three huge eras, weirdly, mirroring Star Wars in a way, of coverage. And so, like, getting some table setting, and, like, look, I am sure we will talk about Mike Richardson in the future.
How could he ever come up?
Well, look.
He writes some of this. He was the
I was going to say.
Empire, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and like he was the main writer of Crimson Empire, a book I just said I liked.
yeah.
So
No, I mean it's similar to a Jim Shooter. It's very easy to cast Mike Richardson as a bad guy,
yes,
and there are ups and downs to the things he's done.
right. And we can talk about in future episodes maybe some of our personal experiences where this company is concerned.
I might have worked under Mike Richardson once upon a time.
But
Far under him, but yes.
if you want to read into the meta narrative of this a little bit, I would say, because we're going to be dancing around some of these topics, do yourselves a favor, maybe Google the man. I think there's a whole Wikipedia section of controversies beneath his name. So
yeah, I mean,
you can read that in your own time. We're not going to be covering it exhaustively here, is what I'm saying.
Sure. But anyway, that's all to say, if you love this content and want more of it and to support it, you can go over to our Patreon page, which is patreon.podbean.com/punchup. There you can get cool exclusive bonus content as well as supporting all the shows on the Punch Up Entertainment Network. Once again, that's patreon.podbean.com/punchup.
Yes, indeed. And of course, the best way to consume this show, to take it in, is over on our YouTube page. YouTube.com/punchup, I believe, is also, or we punch up ent over there.
I think, that's a good question.
But anyway, Punch Up Entertainment on YouTube. You can find us pretty easily. And that's the best way to watch this show, is watch along with us on YouTube. You can read the comics along with us.
We're Punch Up Entertainment.
Okay, we're youtube.com/punchupentertainment over there. Yep. You can find YouTube versions of actually all of our podcasts, though for the most part, this is primarily the only one with a video feature to it. The rest you can just kind of have on as background. If you're dual screening playing video games, listen to a podcast while you're at it. Why not?
Sure.
But leave a comment below. What's your favorite Dark Horse Star Wars book? There's so many of them out there, and that was the only Star Wars comics for a while. So what you got, elder millennials and late Gen Xers?
But yeah, that will do it, though, for this week's episode.
Absolutely, because as always, I have been Mike Ergoni.
I'm John Campbell.
And may the panel be with you.